There's a reason for the rest of your life. Some would say when you get saved, you check a box and you're done. We sit around and wait for Jesus to come back. But that's such a waste. That's such a missed opportunity when we were given a job. We were given a reason for existing. I am Nathan. Welcome back to Holy Hypocrites in our series, It's Just the Bible. We are continuing in John chapter 1. We're going to be in verses 6 through 8 today. And it's just this little pause because John's focus is on Jesus through his whole book. And we saw that first block, that first introduction is an introduction to Jesus. Now, John is going to introduce briefly the voice that comes before in John the Baptist. And we see in verses 6 through 8 that John actually reflects, and the way he introduces John the Baptist reflects the way creation is introduced. We saw in Genesis chapter 1, if you've been watching the series, we saw in Genesis chapter 1 these commonalities in every piece of creation that God put something in place. God gives it a name, gives it an identity, gives it a job or a purpose, a reason for existing. And in the same way, he does this with John the Baptist. So, a quick reminder, if you would, to hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help. It really does push. It tells people, whether on the podcast or on the blog or on YouTube, that people are enjoying this, people are paying attention, that maybe more people should get to enjoy it. So, if you would, that'd be great. Let's get back to it. So, let's get into it. I've got my notebook, I've got my Bible. Got those verses written out, verses 6 through 8. If you haven't done that yet, hit pause, write those verses out. It gives a lot of value and a lot of understanding and internalizing when you take the time to write those verses out. So we're in John chapter 1, starting in verses 6. We're going to go through verse 8. It says, "There was a man sent from God whose name was John." We see the first two pieces, just like in creation, that God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God intentionally, actively, notice, sent from God. This is not a passive verb. This is God doing a thing that would not have happened otherwise. And so God creates, designs, sends John the Baptist. And it says his name was John. We know from the story of the angel telling Elizabeth and Zechariah that John is going to be born. He gives them a name. He says, this is his name. And there's a reason for it. And so his name was John. As we know, names in the Bible are identifiers. God gives John an identity. God gives John a name. He takes responsibility for him. This is all very intentional. Verse 7, he came as a witness to bear witness about the light. So, two things here. First, a general phrase, he came as a witness, but more specifically, not just a broad general witness, but a witness to the light that we've just been introduced to in the previous verses. He came to be a witness, to bear witness about the light, so a witness, somebody with a job and a measurable outcome, so that all might believe through him. So John has an identity given by God and a purpose and a measurable outcome, a reason for doing his job. To bear witness about the light so that all might believe through him. Verse 8, he was not the light, but came to bear witness about the light. John the Baptist is very clear in all that we hear him teach. He's not the guy. He's the guy that comes before the guy. He gets out of his way. And we see John, the Apostle John, follow this blueprint where he gets out of the way to the point that he doesn't even put his name in his book. He calls himself the disciple Jesus loved. He gets out of the way so that Jesus can shine, so that Jesus can be seen first and foremost. Even when we see John baptizing, John is surrounded by his audience, his disciples, people that would exalt him. And when John sees Jesus approaching, he points his audience to Jesus. He puts the attention on Jesus. He puts the glory on Jesus. And so he came as a witness to bear witness so that all might believe. He was not the light, but came to bear witness about the light. Fast forward to Acts chapter 1, Jesus tells the apostles before he leaves, you will be my witnesses. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses. This is the mission of the church. This is the purpose of the church. So, in that way, you might call John the Baptist the first Christian, the first person with this precise purpose, this specific purpose to bear witness specifically to Jesus Christ. Of course, we know the whole Bible points to Jesus. All of history points to Jesus. And everything since Jesus points back to him. But the particular human being of Jesus Christ, who was fully man, his specific identity, John the Baptist is the first one we see tasked with the job of pointing people to Jesus, of being a witness to Jesus specifically. And so, John the Baptist has introduced the voice, the one that comes before to prepare the way. Now, what's great about John is John never takes his eye off the ball. The first 5 verses, he introduces Jesus in some depth. He takes this brief pause to go, hey, by the way, there's a character, a guy that came before that you need to know about. But he's immediately going to jump back to Jesus in verse 9. He says, the true light was coming into the world. We're going to get to that next week. But it's important to note that John is created just like all of creation. John the Baptist is created just like all of creation with a job, an identity from God, a purpose, and a measurable outcome for existing. He's not just placed, set spinning. Some would say God created the world, God set the universe spinning, and then is like, okay, let's see what happens. Each individual piece of creation is there on purpose. And that translates to us today. If we're trying to follow Jesus, we do so with a purpose. Jesus said, go and make disciples. Jesus said, you will be my witnesses. There's a reason for the rest of your life. Some would say when you get saved, you check a box and you're done. We sit around and wait for Jesus to come back. But that's such a waste. That's such a missed opportunity when we were given a job. We were given a reason for existing, to point people to Jesus. I recently told students, we were talking about prayer and talking about starting our prayers with praise, as Jesus taught his disciples to pray first, our Father in heaven, holy is your name. He taught them that before any of the requests, before even confession of sin, to pray first praise, to pray first, holy is your name. The reason for that, and as I told students, the big idea of that message, that lesson that night was God's will is for people to look at you and see him. God's will for Christians is that people would interact with us and see him and learn about him and get an idea what he is like. That is the purpose, that we would be witnesses, that we would be messengers and representatives, that as people interact with us, they would get an idea what he is like. That is the point. And so John is introduced here as the first one of these who are put on earth, given an identity unique to followers of Jesus. The purpose being that he is in place when Jesus comes on the scene to point people, to draw people's attention to it. Like a sound and tech or a lighting person in the theater sets the spotlight where the soloist is going to step. And the spotlight is in place and prepared so people know where to look, when to look at the featured performer. John is the spotlight pointing people to Jesus, and that is our purpose on earth. That was only 3 verses. It's just what's in the Bible. It's in here. John takes a minute to introduce John the Baptist, and then he's going to get back to Jesus, which we will get into next week. Thank you for watching, listening, and we'll be back next week with another It's Just the Bible. Have a great week.